We are the tribe from the north, we're brave and we're bold. Defeating our rivals never gets old. Making our way to the Big Sky Conference. Watch out, 'cause here comes the silver and gold. Whoa, whoa. This is Tubbs at the club for the Vandals of Idaho.
Welcome back, Tribe from the North, brave and bold, to the official, unofficial podcast of your Idaho Vandals and the Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brian Marceau, and we're joined today by at least my favorite producer, Dallas Hammer. Dallas, again, we've got a rough set of basketball games to talk about, but other than that, how's your sports world?
Absolutely terrible. The Anaheim Ducks are trying to just get rid of one of their highest paid players because he's underperforming so bad. They're just looking to dump him. And their team is not as bad as Idaho basketball, but it is painful to watch. So not great, Brian. How about you?
You know, based off what you said, I feel that the jury's in, and my decision to not become a hockey fan was the right call. But after that, Vandal fans, we're here for instant reaction to what, in my mind, is one of the worst weekends in the history of Idaho men's basketball, or good Lord, I hope it was one of the worst weekends. But before that, ain't nothing like cracking a Montucky cold snack, an ultra-refreshing light beer born in majestic Big Sky country. The best part is, when you crack a snack, you're giving back. Montucky Cold Snacks donates 8% of all profits back to local causes, even right here in Idaho, supporting organizations like CW Hogs and Idaho Food Bank. Yeehaw! That's freaking awesome. Montucky Cold Snacks, the light American lager for pow-pow rippers, gator wranglers, pony riders, and badass do-gooders. Visit MontuckyColdSnacks.com today to find out how to get your ass some snacks. And we wish we were actually at the bar right now, Dallas, but it's time for Around the Bar, brought to us by Hughes River Expedition. Game summaries for Thursday and Saturday against Portland State. First game Thursday in Portland. Second game in Moscow at Men's Gym. Thursday, Idaho goes down 64-84 in a loss that was nowhere near as close as the 20-point margin would suggest. Damon Thacker led us with 16 points off the bench. James Scott led Portland State with 14, which is actually kind of surprising to see a leading scorer for a team won by 20 only scored 14. But anyway, not that important. Saturday, Idaho manages to look worse than we did on Thursday, which is quite a feat. Going down 40-71 in Moscow. Damon Thacker again led us with 13 points, and James Scott again led Portland State with 16 points. And I may have stepped on the lead already, Dallas, but tell us after those two games, what's the story?
The story to me is that this Idaho team is one of the worst teams that anyone is ever going to see across, honestly, the history of college basketball. This team is putrid. It's mind-boggling to me, honestly. You mentioned James Scott led PSU with 14 points. That's because they had 10 different guys register double-digit minutes. Like, they played 14 guys with the bottom of their bench played multiple minutes. It wasn't just the club trill, like 1 minute, zeros across the board. They actually played because that game was such a blowout. And then Saturday was obviously just as bad. I think, to me, that's the story, is this team is absolute trash. The funny thing is, you look at just the box score from Thursday. Idaho shot 69% from the field in the first half, 83% from three. And you'd think, if you just looked at like Team A shot this percentage in a half, you would think that team was absolutely destroying their opponent. Nope. The 21 field goals made and 26 turnovers is absurd. And there's no hope for this team. There's no win on this schedule. This team is going to be the first team in, I'll let you tell the listeners, but first team in a very long time to go winless in the Big Sky.
What I'm going to say the story is that Thursday was box score heaven if you're kind of a basketball aficionado. And you referenced it, man. We were shooting 68% you said 68% at the half, 83% from three in the first half, and we were down by 6. I have a tweet that I should have given the minutes to that I'm going to make quick reference to, which was that in the second half, Idaho our field goal percentage went slightly down. We had a point where we were shooting 65% from the field, 71% from three. This is well into the second half, and we were losing by 16, which is, it's hard to explain to anyone how that's even feasible to happen. Like, the issue was an embarrassing number of turnovers that were not from the Portland State press just destroying us. It's that Portland State showed up and we showed up. That was the problem. You referenced it. Another box score, just miracle from these two games is that Idaho has set the gold standard of we have a new ratio to talk about, which is field goals made to turnovers. And for consecutive games, Thursday and Saturday, Idaho had more turnovers than we had field goals made. Thursday, we had 26 turnovers and 21 made shots. Saturday, we found a way. We saw that number, and Klaus was like, no, dude, guys, we have to do worse. We have to set the standard. 21 to 26, not good enough. Today, Idaho made 12 field goals and turned the ball over 20 times. So obviously, there is just nothing that you're going to do if you're going to turn the ball over that many times. But Dallas, I mean, we're obviously playing a juggernaut, right? I mean, Portland State has to be at the top of the conference, aren't they?
Unfortunately, no. They're one of the mediocre to bad teams in the Big Sky. This is a team, realistically, when we still had a little bit of hope for a win a couple weeks ago, we looked at Idaho State and Portland State are the places that maybe we could scratch one out. They're not good. They use that press to try to keep themselves in games and try to irritate opponents and scratch off a couple wins, but they're not particularly good. And honestly, it looked like a Power 5 football team beating up on an FCS team is what that looked like. And this was an inter-conference opponent.
Yeah, and not even a particularly good interconference opponent. Heading into this weekend, Dallas, Portland State was 3-5 in Big Sky play. They should have been 2-6, and that Weber State threw away a game against Portland State just by not showing up for the first 10 minutes of the game. Weber State had a 20-point deficit that they almost completely erased. But 3-5 heading into playing Idaho. They're 5-5 after annihilating us twice, which still, that means, we talked about last week, Idaho State, that Idaho's got to the point that we are now happy if we're kind of competitive with a mid-level Big Sky team. Portland State's been my barometer this entire year of if you don't kill if your team kills Portland State, you're probably pretty good. If you split or don't kill Portland State, I mean, you're okay. You're not a threat to win the league, but you're not terrible. And if you're getting swept by Portland State, then you're Idaho. So, just a little bit more box score fun. Idaho's second game. Now, actually, you know what? Second game we shot 38.5% from, sorry, I read the wrong line. Idaho today shot 31.6% from the field, 18.2% from three. You could tell, just offensively, there's nothing we were doing this interesting, nothing we were doing that we had a chance of doing. We don't have Big Sky players. We don't have D1 players. Fun fact, Northwest Nazarene beat Portland State this year, guys. Northwest Nazarene, that's an Idaho school. That's a Dallas at NAIA, or are they D2?
They are D2, and they also beat the Vandals last year.
It was actually a couple of years ago. So
was it 2 years? Okay.
Yeah, it was Berlin's last year.
Okay, 2 years ago then. My apologies.
Yeah, that's okay. Completely understand running these teams together. But Northwest Nazarene beat Portland State this year. That's my reference point of, is Portland State playing better at the end of the season than they were at the start? Yeah, of course. Sure, lots of teams are. But that's our reference. Idaho, we've had more games in conference than Portland State. Idaho's had almost no games canceled since the first couple weeks of the season, so we're getting our reps in. We're just not going to get better because we do not have the tools to get better. And I want to make one last point, Dallas, about the Idaho State game from last week that I'm going to connect here, which is one of the stories people give about bad teams is that what you need to look at is growth. And I'm going to tell you that Zach Klaus appears to have no idea what he thinks this team should do. And I'm going to talk about last week, Idaho State. We get just embarrassed by Idaho State not even trying on Thursday. Saturday, we completely switch up our strategy for the entire season, dribble out the clock for 20 seconds before doing anything. We did it in the dumbest, least interesting way possible, where you don't even create movement that could be used for deception earlier. I bring that up because if we're saying, okay, this is a cohesive strategy Klaus is going to build upon, we should have seen that in these 2 games against Portland State, and we should have seen additional complexity in us at least moving the ball around with the goal of killing the time. But you can then create moments where you lull a team into playing defense for a long time, then you do like a quick back cut for an easy 2. We didn't even go back at all in Portland State either game to the strategy we did against Idaho State. Klaus is just throwing stuff at the wall to see what works, and we can really, again, go back to that pass, Hunter Madden, which the comparison I should have made with Jake Constantine. That was my bad last week. But Hunter Madden's pass with 0.7 seconds left that went to no one, and then gave Idaho State the ball with a chance to win with 0.7 seconds left under their own basket. That is the play. That is a desperate play call by a guy who thinks getting a win is going to matter in some way, when it has one win in our season. That won't differentiate us between being, okay and awful. A 1-win team is a 0-win team. It doesn't matter. That's just an embarrassing product. And what we saw against Idaho State was Zach Klaus bailing on anything that you would say Idaho's trying to build upon. And what buttresses that point to me is, watch this game, these 2 games. There was no interconnected strategy between what we saw work against Idaho State and then what we tried against Portland State, Dallas.
And that's the thing. It absolutely feels like it's just a guy just trying to find a way to get a win. And I get it. This is probably hell on him. He's the coach of maybe the worst team we're ever going to see. They are not going to win a game this year. It's got to be tough being the captain of that ship. Sometimes we talk about the advanced ratings, our offensive and defensive ratings against Idaho State in that admittedly absolutely awful game we lost in overtime. It was a top 5 offensive performance from us and a top 3 defensive performance from us, and we still lost. And that's, you'd think if there was an actual strategy here of this is what we're going to build upon, the coaching staff would have looked at that and been like, okay, how do we refine this? How do we tweak this? How do we keep games competitive like this? And then, I mean, maybe the press, they got afraid of, I don't know. That's me trying to make an excuse here. There was absolutely nothing this set of games against Portland State that indicated at all they had gone to the drag it out almost like 4 corners offense of just, we're going to stand here and dribble until the last possible second. It's maddening to me to watch this team almost alternate styles every single game. And it stems from a lack of talent, honestly. And you and I have our belief in how the coaching is going. And I think that most of our listeners are probably thinking the same thing. There's not a lot of strength to be found there. Something I did want to mention about just the statistics of the Saturday game, because while yes, Idaho lost by 31, it was a whole lot worse than that. Idaho was down 4 points at halftime. For anybody that's just looking at the score and like, oh, they lost by 31, they were down 4 at halftime. Portland State went on a 34-6 run to start the second half. It's getting hard for me to find new ways to say this team absolutely sucks every single week we record this. It feels like I'm just, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and expecting things to be different. I'm not expecting things to be different at this point, but I am absolutely just saying over and over, oh, they turned the ball over too much. Oh, they can't shoot. Well, I mean, they can shoot. They just can't actually make the basket. Oh, they can't defend very well. They can't do anything. And that's where we're at, is this team sucks.
And one of the things I want to talk about, because we'd referenced defense more last time, and we've talked about frustrations with what I think are outdated stylistic approaches, both offensive and defensively. I mean, that's why I keep the joking tracker of Idaho long twos, which of course is always a sub 50%. And if you're shooting a ton of long twos, you have to shoot about 60% for those to be good shots. But Idaho, this is a defensive stat that I just think is it should be maddening to people. And this is what I mean when I say Zach Klaus has a mind for basketball that hit its expiration date in 1970. Defensively, Idaho has the worst. We are the worst team at defending the three in the entire league. Teams shoot 40.9% from three against us. Dallas, this might surprise you because some people might see that and be like, okay, well, I bet Idaho's just kind of being judicious in the number of threes, in allowing threes. No. Teams shoot the most threes in the league against Idaho, and they have the most three-point makes against Idaho. Part of it's because we've played more games than everyone, but the gap between first and second is not close enough in any way for the number of games to explain why Idaho has allowed teams to make 151 threes against us on the year, while we have made a total of 79 threes. That's again, this is just modern basketball. This is probably why we talk about it. Of threes are like, if you can shoot over 33% from threes, that is essentially a net win for you. Shooting 41% from three against Idaho is pretty close to shooting, over 60% from the field on twos, and defensively, that's just not quite good enough. And if teams are getting that many threes off easy against us, and you can see it, teams get open threes off of one pass, penetration where help defense comes from one pass away from a three all the time. That is not an accident with how much it happens. That is strategy. We're trying to pack the paint and give up open threes. And guess what? We give up those open threes. And Dallas, I'm going to talk about the stat really quick that I've probably made this a bigger deal in my head than it actually is already. But you referenced it. One of the worst teams we've ever seen. I am going to go on record right now. We are watching the worst men's basketball team in the 21st century in the Big Sky, which is to say Zach Kloss is putting together a historically bad campaign. And the stat I'm going to reference for why I'm saying this is historically bad, I made the mistake of doing a deep dive through Big Sky stats before this game to see what the scoring margin looked like dating back to 2001, 2002. And comparing Idaho to every worst team in the league from 01-02 to today. And at this moment, Idaho has a stranglehold on both stats that you'd want to see. If you're going to say who is the worst team, you would say it'd be a combination of the record and scoring margin. Right now at 0-16, Idaho has we have secured at this point worst league record in the 21st century. Only one other team is really even in the discussion with us. 2008, 2009, Sac State went 1-15. We're 0-16 with 4 more games against the Montanas. But the other stat, scoring margin. Idaho owns the worst scoring margin of the 21st century in Big Sky Conference play. We are up or down to negative 17.4. So on average, we lose games by 17.4 points per game. The real competition for us, again, is 08-09 Sac State at negative 16.4. I'm going to post this on Twitter and all Vandals just so people can see the research. But this is why I've used the term historically bad when talking about this Idaho team. This isn't like hyperbole to say frustration. That is a diagnostic term in relation to having looked through stats. That what you have seen on our, if you're one of the few who tunes in, and if you listen to our show, I wouldn't be shocked if we get more people who watch the show and want to watch the game at this point. But if you think, hey, it can't get worse, it's because in the Big Sky in the 21st century, it does not get worse. That's not exaggeration. That's just where we are, Dallas.
And I think that's the most frustrating thing about all of this is this isn't like Idaho losing to if they played Wazoo every single game. Like, it's a Pac-12 school. Eventually you'd think that that's going to even out and they're going to get crushed. These are teams that we're supposed to compete with. These are teams that a couple of years ago, Idaho had a good team and actually beat the hell out of some of these guys. And now here we are. I mean, a 17-point differential is embarrassing. And like you said, there's the 08-09 Sac State team, I think was negative 16.4. No other team in the last 20 years has had anything under 15. There's only a couple that are even under 14 or 13. Like, this is historically atrocious. And it's not comforting to know that the stats back it up, but it is nice to see that the stats back up what we're watching every single week. Because if I have to watch, I'm going to call him out by name, and it's not an indication of him. I think it's the coaching and what the defense is being told to do. But if I have to watch Gabe Quinnett stand at the high post while the guy takes an open three and he puts one hand up and kind of steps into it because he's been told to pack the post, I'm going to lose it. It is absurd that Idaho is giving teams these easy shots. Like you said, it's like we're playing basketball from the 70s, and that hasn't been realistic for at least a decade now. That teams should be expecting the 3-point shot.
We're in the midst of the worst three-year run in the 21st century, where Klaus owns the worst scoring margin since 01-02. Don Verlin's last season owns the third worst scoring margin since 01-02 at negative 14.2. And really, we're competing with 07-08 through 2010, 2011 Sac State. And by the way, Sac State's a school Idaho fans would probably make fun of. We're competing with them for their worst run the 21st century. I'd say we have it, which we have to give a couple quick comments, Dallas. Interview we had with Terry Golick, where, look, we're happy she came on. Both of us, if we're talking about non-basketball stuff, are probably pretty dang happy that we have Terry Golick making decisions for us in Idaho. But I want to hear your take real quick, Dallas. Just talking about basketball questions, because again, otherwise we love having Terry Golick and we'd love to have her on again and talk basketball longer. What was your take on her two basketball answers?
My take is that she can't really say much, obviously. As somebody that used to be in the media, in case anybody was unaware, I was a TV journalist for a fair number of years. I've interviewed more than my share of athletic directors, and they're not going to come out and just flay a coach. That's just not how it works. Maybe I don't know, Alabama, if Nick Saban went 3-9 one year, I would fully expect their athletic director to tear him apart because he's being paid $7 million, whatever it is. At this level of athletics, you're not going to get like the athletic director to come out and say, yeah, this guy sucks, he needs to do a better job. But it felt, I think the phrase you've used is damning with faint praise. It was very neutered, which is, again, what I would expect. The optimist in me looks at that as like okay, she acknowledged that there were problems with the program that Klaus has kind of corrected behind the scenes, and that winning is the next step of fixing that. But there was like praise of he's going to do it, he's going to turn it around, and it's hard to believe from a fan's standpoint. I hope it's going to happen, or it could have been the damning with faint praise, and 3 months from now when we're hiring a new coach, it was that was as rough as she could get about it. But to me, it was just pretty neutered, and just the statement we'd expect to hear from that question that doesn't really give us any insight into if we're going to keep doing this and hope that this train turns around, or if it's just it is what it is.
Yeah, my reaction is, again, I'm going to second what you said. Of course, she's not going to break news about personnel stuff on Tubs of the Club. By the way, she legally wouldn't be able to anyway, even if let's say we were idiots and we thought that might happen. She legally can't anyway. But I'm going to point to obviously, like, we're happy if Klaus is taking care of institutional stuff. That does matter. That actually might give us more light on why Verlin was dismissed, which was of course pre-Terry Golick, so that wouldn't be exactly on her plate. But if you're a fan curious about why the dismissal took place, clearly, if she's referencing academic issues prior to Klaus, we know who was prior to Klaus. Like, we follow the team. So maybe that gives better context in why Verlin was ultimately dismissed. But I'm going to say for this team, I thought it was a pretty weak answer. The reason I say that is, like, I didn't expect any fire, but there wasn't even acknowledgement of what we're seeing on the court, which is what I think is probably disappointing to some listeners. I will say that you're right. We may find out it actually wasn't a weak answer, and what she was doing truly was damning with faint praise, essentially describing Zach Klaus as an RA. Like, when she went through what the metrics are for coaches, it really sounded like she was describing a 6-figure RA who's supposed to make sure the kids follow rules and turn in their work, which obviously they're supposed to. But if the athletics is supposed to be the front porch, it's because, like, we actually do care about the competition. I wish she could have touched on that. She didn't, but again, we'd love to have her on again and go further. I also, as a non-athletic director, don't know what she can't say. But as just a fan, if I quit talking from the analysis perspective, not even acknowledging the performance was really disappointing, and I won't call that confidence inspiring whatsoever. I guess what you, as a fan, what we'll find out is again, we say damning with faint praise because if you won't even talk about what's happening on the courts because you're admitting there's nothing positive on the court to talk about. So our question is, was that as hot as she could be? Because we'll get a dismissal later. Or is she a true believer? And she was just saying how she felt. I'm not going to speculate for someone. She can just tell us what she can on her own. Look, she spoke. I'm not going to give her words. We have to go off what she said. So look, we're going to see ultimately later on, but again, this just is what sets basketball aside. I love what Terry Gollick's done with everything else in this athletic department. Basketball, just different story. And again, until further notice, there's not much for us to pay attention to. And that was Around the Bar, guys, brought to you by Hughes River Expedition. I'm going to do my best to not butcher this ad read, Hughes River, although it was kind of fun last time. Anyway, needing summer vacation plans that even COVID-19 can't ruin, there's an option right in your back door. Venture into the largest protected wilderness in the continental U.S. for the ultimate form of social distancing. Hughes River Expeditions has run first-class trips on rivers in the West since 1976. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon River Canyons, the Selway, or even special trips like the one to see the Perseid meteor shower. Camp on pristine beaches, hike amazing trails, spot elusive wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, take in the history along the river, and let HRE handle everything else. Hughes River Expeditions is Vandal owned and ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Taking booking now through the 2023 season. Don't miss out and check them out at hughesriver.com or give them a call at 800-262-1882. What are you waiting for? Find out what it's like to grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now at 800-262-1882. Time to close the bar, Dallas. Do you mind giving the announcement about basketball stuff really quick?
So, spoiler alert, football starts next weekend. So, Brian and I are officially off of this weekly show. We're going to be doing weekly recaps of the football games live after the game. And we just assumed that our listeners are going to care much more about that than they are listening to a basketball show on a team that isn't going to win a game this year. So we will end up doing a end of season recap after they lose the 4 games to the 2 Montana schools and then get crushed in the first round of the tournament, whoever it is that they play. We'll do a quick little wrap up show, much like we do these, just talking about how bad Idaho basketball sucks. But for us, as soon as we sign off, we are focused on football.
Yeah, I'll keep the worst in the 21st century tracker going from now on. Now that I finally talked about it, I can post it, which I promise. I leaked this to like 5 people. So excited about the stat. But yeah, we're going to prioritize football, guys. I think football is more exciting anyway, viewership wise. In case you guys are curious, yeah, viewership's way higher in football. So we're going to do instant reaction to football starting next week, right, Dallas?
Yeah, starting next week, we are going live from the Corner Club about an hour after the game against Eastern. And if anybody missed it on the Idaho preview show with Athletic Director Terry Gollick, I admitted I have never been to the Corner Club. So Mark Trivelpiece, the owner, has been in contact with us about my punishment and the different ways I'm going to have to make amends to him and the rest of the Vandal alumni. So I believe we're all going to be there except for Brian. Brian will be watching the game remotely while the rest of us are crammed at a table at the club, but should be a good time.
Yeah. I still got too many people in my life got to be careful about. So I'll be manning the computer from home, still watching on the Pluto stream like a lot of people will. We're excited for football season. We'll do a closing the book episode on basketball because I think we do need to. But anyway, we're going to close with good news like we always do because the games are over. We can turn away from this now. And it's time for the best band in all the land to play us out. Sound of Idaho. Go Vandals.